Hello and welcome everyone. I am Matt and this is Noesun Podcast, a series of conversations with trailblazers. Together we explore transformative experiences and spaces. Our research in ontological design at noesun.com motivates insightful conversations with experts. It was natural to start making them public. We aim to develop this podcast into a forum for sense-making. My guest today is Nicole Siegel. She's a sexological bodyworker, Doula, coach and healer at Body Compass. On both sides of the Atlantic, Nicole helps individuals, couples and teams act on their deepest and truest desires by helping them reconnect to pleasure and their bodies. In this episode, you will learn about the importance of integrating all our desires and our body parts through the body and despite society, how she skillfully balances client-led and imparting knowledge, manifesting and surrendering, and safety and exploration, and finally, how play, liminal spaces, rupture healing and community support our growth journey. I wish you to enjoy my conversation with Nicole. Thank you, Nicole. It's been a while. We've known each other, but we never really got into the topics we're going to get on today. And I guess that's because of the way we met. We were so focused on the delivery of the birth of Leo that everything else was not really important to me at the time. I didn't really resonate with what you were doing, not because I wasn't interested, but because there was just too much to think about and feel with the arrival of Leo, my first son. So yeah, thank you for taking the time now to talk about what we started to talk about maybe a year ago now. I'm super excited to learn from you because I'm grateful for what you've done with Leo and getting us ready and the day of the birth. And because of what I know from you, from that experience, I'm really interested in learning through you about those topics because I trust you. It's a topic that I've never covered. I never wrote about it. I never read about it. So it's very new to me. And I think this beginner's mind is going to be really useful for the talk because I'm basically going to be very honest in my questions. I don't know anything. Apart from the one session we did together, and it was just a very quick introduction. If you want to share a little bit about your feelings right now before we get into the talk so that people know our states.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me too. I'm excited for this conversation. Just the questions you sent over before we got online made me super excited, and I wanted to send you voice notes back immediately with answers. So yeah, thanks. I'm doing well. Starting a business is more than a full-time job. I'm so thankful I don't have a child right now. So I don't know how in the world you and Kat do it. You are like the most power couple I've ever met. Yeah, I'm busy, but I never feel tired because I love what I'm doing so much. There are moments where I feel very exposed because I feel like my offerings are coming from my personal experience and I care about them a lot. And so it feels vulnerable. Every time I share something on Facebook, every time I'm creating a course or an event for people, it feels special to be doing the work and it feels sensitive a lot of the time.
Mm. I can only resonate on the entrepreneur side. It's a journey, and I wish we were even more power couple than what you think we are, because we are not. We're basically a constant roller coaster, and I feel the same way you do. We're also starting. I think having so many hats and trying to manifest something, it takes a lot of time before it's actually out there, and when it's out there, it takes also some time before it's successful. And all this time, you need to be believing in yourself, in what you do, and keeping the flame alive. There are days that are difficult. Today is not one of those. So I'm okay, but there are days where you need to get your state back. Anyway, before we jump in the content, tell me a bit about yourself, maybe what is driving you doing all of this, and we'll define maybe what is this.
Okay. So what is driving me to do all of this? A lot of people ask me how I found this path. I think in a lot of ways we make choices in life to become whole and to find ways to heal parts of ourselves. I see that's certainly true for healers, and I think that's true for everybody else too. We're always kind of orienting towards whatever our ideal of pleasure might be, even if we are very disconnected from that concept or those sensations. I think we're always orienting towards that. And it was the same for me. I didn't know it at the time, but I was looking for a way to heal myself. And I didn't realize that my sexuality was at the center of all of that. And so I started looking for therapies for myself that felt right. I'd done traditional talk therapy and it didn't I was still left being confused by my own action a lot of the time. When I was in conversation with people that I loved, I was reacting to them in ways um, that were unrecognizable to me. And I had a moment of stillness when the pandemic started, or when the pandemic reached Spain. I had a plan at that time to go into economics, and I was going to get married and move to London. I had a month by month plan for the next 2 years. And then that moment of stillness that the lockdown forced me to look into my own reflection in a in a way that I never have before, because I was left looking at all the decisions I had made, because I wasn't doing anymore. I had to pause, and all I could do was observe. And I realized that that's it. I felt like I was about to walk off of a cliff into a life that had nothing to do with me. And so I started looking for healing modalities for myself. And I started going to a sexological body worker, and I started healing my relationship to my body and the sensation in my body and my sexuality. So, what is driving me all the time is my own healing. The offerings that I give people, that I put out there, are relevant to me now. And I think it'll be that way forever. I don't think we ever stop learning.
Super interesting. Maybe we can define a little bit what you do in a nutshell.
I'm a pleasure coach and body worker, and I'm a doula as well. I help heal people's relationship to their bodies, or I empower them to do so themselves. Um, and I do that through the body. So, through the body and through touch, which to me, they're the same. But I know that there's embodiment starting to be like a buzzword. I mean, you're seeing it peppered into a lot of different modalities. I find that it's very difficult to experience embodiment when there's no touch involved, because then you're not interacting with the interface that you have to the world. So, through practices like meditation and movement and touch practices where I'm actually doing hands on, hands in work, I'm helping people heal their relationship to their bodies, to sensation, to their sexuality, and to desire and pleasure.
Okay. It's funny you said embodiment is a buzzword because I used it. We have a retreat coming up and I put embodied arts because for me, my feeling of improv and acting has been basically embodiment. And it was all the concept that I knew about the construction of the self and the living of specific states. It's basically what the actors are doing. Although it's not always touch, it's basically breath work, the posture, the movement, the face. When you make a face, you actually are touching yourself through the different muscles and your skin is moving. So there's an element of touch, it's just self-touch. I never really thought about acting through the sensation of touch on the skin. I understand what you do. If you project yourself 10 years from now, how does it look like? And you might not have an idea right now, but if you project yourself, is it something online? Are you doing retreats? Are you doing physical events with loads of people, few people? How do you see it play? 10 years is a long time, especially given what you've done in the last 2 years.
I have, I don't know, I have the direction that I want to go in, or I have where I'm orienting towards, but I have no idea what it's going to look like. I know that what's important to me is creating safe spaces for people, and spaces where people feel able to access sensation in their body and able to access the sensation of safety, the actual felt sense of safety, and be able to make decisions from that place. I don't know if the best way to provide that for people is to continue to do one-to-one set work with people, or if it's more community oriented. I know that embodiment and somatic work is important to do in community because we our bodies are interacting with community all of the time. Things that are important to me are creating safe spaces for people, healing their relationship to their bodies. And a lot of the wounds that we have from our bodies are relational. And so you need to fix them in relationship as well. And so I wonder if community is a part of that. I have dreams of creating a center in the middle of the city that's an authenticity center where people can lead themselves through an embodiment journey, kind of like a gym membership. I don't know. I have very abstract clouds of ideas for 10 years from now, but no way anything specific.
when you think about community, it's a space where people come and specific values are manifested and specific practices are done.
I don't know. I'm constantly trying to strike this balance between client-led work and also imparting some knowledge onto people that I have, because I think it's so important to respect the organizing system that everyone has inside of themselves. So in section, I'm always using the words that other people are using to describe what's going on in them, because I don't want to prescribe them sensation or feeling states or anything, while at the same time being able to lead them through where they want to go. And so whether I don't know if it'll be specific practices or specific values or just somehow a space for people to find their own. I have no idea.
Good.
It's hard to strike the balance.
What you bring up, the tension that you bring up between client-led and you pushing, I mean, not pushing, but offering content is very interesting. I was reading Carl Rogers on Becoming, which is a book that I found amazing for therapeutical relationships. And one of the things he speaks about is the fact that we are not taught to explain what we feel put words on emotions, because vocabulary is extremely limited. And also because my feeling of love might not be yours. And so how do you do actually to create that connection with people, with them telling you things, and basically they don't have much granularity in what they feel in their body. They don't have much vocabulary to attach to this little granularity. How do you create those bridge with people, you knowing more than them, but you trying to make it client-led? Because if people don't know, it's hard for them to be leading with wisdom if they don't really have it in a way that they can share it with you. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's always something to notice. It's just giving it the space to come forth and to bubble up to the surface. So questions I ask people are, how do you know that you're feeling sad? Or how do you know that you're feeling X emotion? What is your body showing you to tell you that you're feeling sad? What comes before the label of sadness? There's all kinds of things to notice about the emotions that we're having, but also every interaction that we have with the world, there's some sensation that happens inside of us, because the body doesn't communicate through these neat words like sad or calm or whatever. There's all these, metaphors that come up in the body. There's color, temperature. So as I'm looking around this room that I'm in, which I won't show you because it's just well, it's very busy. There's way too much stuff in here. And
it looks good on this side. You chose
yeah, but as I'm looking around the room and there's so much stuff, like the sensations in my body there's like this movement back and forth, like a very small, thin snake going in the middle of my body up, and a vibration, and the color like white, yellow, red. And so describing sensation that way in a non-hierarchical way. So we're not like labeling it good or bad, and we're not trying to change anything about it, or I'm not trying to make it make sense to you either. Just notice those things. They're always there. They're always there to notice if you just give them space. And I say we're strengthening that muscle. That's how I work through that with my clients. I just give it space.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You spoke about sexological bodywork, and that's a term that when you told me about it, I was like,
What is this?
And it's funny because there's this taboo even in the way I think about the experiences I'm designing, because to me, it's everything that is plant medicine and sex. There are two things that are difficult to create frames around in a way that is safe within and looks safe outside, because investors, partners, people who rent the space, whatever, partners, you want to make people feel that it's going to be safe. And so those two aspects, I'm always really cautious. I don't mind talking about it, but I'm really cautious about how to integrate them within the spaces that I'm thinking. I'm interested in what is it first, and maybe also you talk a lot about body literacy on your website. We alluded to it already. If you can tell me what those two concepts mean for you, that'd be amazing.
So sexological bodywork is the specific modality that I'm certified in. I've described a lot of it already. I work with embodiment practices and hands-on work. And we work with this idea of radical acceptance of the self, including the acceptance of the entire body as well. And so we don't exclude the genitals and the erogenous zones in touch. And the idea behind that is that when you're not exiling parts of the self, you're allowing for unintegrated pieces of you to come forward and then be integrated into the whole. When things are not integrated, we're kind of operating on these like subconscious moral standards, and bringing those to the space and acknowledging them and then being witnessed in them and not judged allows for this integration of the self. And a lot of those unconscious behaviors are kind of bundled up in the erogenous zones because there's so much charge with that part of the body. We have a lot of ideas about pleasure in our society, and that it's wrong and it's hedonistic to be living a life that's oriented towards pleasure. And so there's all this charge around pleasure. And so there's all this charge around these parts of our bodies. So much so that we usually don't even have words to refer to them that feel comfortable in our mouths. It's like we don't even have words to talk about these parts of our bodies. And when we kind of strip all of that away and create an environment where everything is accepted and all of desire is accepted, you're just leaving space for things that haven't seen the light of day, maybe ever, to come forward and then be carried with love. So that's the thinking behind the hands-on work on the erogenous zones. And it can be so transformative to bring those parts of you forward and to not be hiding them and to just have a chance to heal that shame. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I mean, so many things come up in my mind when you speak about those things, because that brings up being nude in public, that brings up touching strangers in different ways. And that's just, to me, that those are many questions without answer, because I'm thinking always about the community. What's most important in my mind is what is the experience, but it's a community experience. So it's quite radical to implement those things at a community level. I totally hear what you say, and it's exciting, but I see both the opportunity and the threats. It's marvelous opportunity to create that kind of space. And I remember workshops I did where it was about getting, like, stripping away clothes. You don't have to be nude at the end, but stripping away stuff so that people can see you more than they would usually see you. And this practice was one of the strongest ones. And another one was about touching people you could not see, and you were just touching people. I think I told you about this experience.
Mm.
And it was about just do whatever you want to do. And even when I was told I could do it, it was very hard for me to do it, because first I had my girlfriend, or not she's my wife, but she was my girlfriend at the time. Then I have all my expectations of how people want to be touched and all these things. I don't know how we're going to get in there, but it's crazy because you're so hardwired to just do those patterns of touch and of not touch, those patterns of being wearing those clothes and not those other ones. And if we're completely stripping away clothes in front of each other right now, I remember being at Africa Burn, and there was this whole week of partying and opening yourself to others and dancing and tribal things. Some people were naked, some people were making love around the fire. It was really tribal. And I remember looking at it and thinking every day, God, I'm going to finish like this. I'm going to finish like this. Like, we're getting super crazy. And at the end, I didn't do it. And so that resistance was super strong. And I don't know if I would do it today. It's been years now, and I've done so many things since then. Would I? I don't know, because I don't even know if I would be comfortable. So maybe I would, I don't know. But I wish that those resistance in me would drop, I don't know why they're there. Also, what is the interest of doing this? What's the point of getting naked around the fire? Is it something really you want to do? If you don't want to do it, why? And so is it your true self telling you, don't do it, but do it? Which one should you listen to? And I mean, I'm not going to do my psychotherapy here, but those are the three main moments where I had those questions about my sexuality and what I show to the world, how I touch myself and all these things, or I touch myself and others. And for those three, I see the resistance. Just like I see the resistance when I'm on stage, being an actor, doing something, and some things are really easy for me to do, others are really difficult to do. And I could see the same pattern with those three activities that I've done. So yeah, what do you think of what I'm telling you?
So the thing that comes immediately to mind is not having a goal, this non-goal oriented living and experiencing of pleasure. The first time that I experienced non-goal oriented sex with a partner, because I've been practicing that in my self-pleasuring for a while, but when I experienced that with another person, that was life-changing. And it's because when we're not setting our mind to the idea of an end, we can fully open up into what's authentic to us right now. And so I wonder what it would look like in this situation that you were talking about around the fire. If so many things. So there's like a culture, and then there's a counter. There can be a reactive culture. And the reactive culture could look like everyone being naked all of the time and everyone being sexual with everyone all of the time. And that just feels like a reaction. That doesn't feel authentic to me either. What would be authentic if everyone were just free to choose what felt right for them right in that moment. And so when I think about a world where people have learned, everyone on earth has learned, all the skills of body literacy and taken away the shame associated with pleasure. What comes to mind for me is it everyone having sex with everyone everywhere and being naked all of the time, because we have so much more diversity in the human experience than I think we recognize, because we have such simplified roles that we can all default to so easily. If we're taking away all of those things and letting them melt away, we're going to be left with a lot of diversity still. And so everyone's not going to want the same thing in the same situation. Everyone's not going to want to be naked all of the time, is my guess. And um, so there's something else I wanted to say in response. Yes. Okay. So this is super relevant in like the Tantra world. In a lot of Tantra courses and events, I'll say it this way. I think it's difficult to curate a sexuality event without there being a goal, because there's such a strong culture that you're trying to counteract to find that freedom and that flexibility to make whatever choice feels relevant to you in that moment. And so when you're having a sexuality event or a course, people tend to want to pendulate totally to the other side and be way more sexual than they normally would, or express their sexuality outward like much more than usual. And I find that can leave um, a very real opportunity for, um, I mean, it leaves an opportunity for trauma. You're not allowing integration at that point. And so I think it's a special skill to find the balance again of having people be in their learning edge instead of an overwhelm. And then that learning edge, you have one foot on resource and you have one foot on something that feels a little bit more challenging, but you're like in both places at once. And so you're able to experience a new thing, and you're able to keep, you have something tied onto the earth still of what you're used to. And I think in this way, we create something new and we find new patterns for ourselves, and we find what feels authentic to us in that moment. And creating a space that allows for people to hold on to safety and experience new things is a special skill. And I'm not sure that like throwing a bunch of people that are on drugs like into a bonfire in the middle of wherever, I wouldn't say that's the best place maybe to take your first steps into like this new world.
Getcha. Yeah. So yeah, I can see why people would want to explore further than they can, just to be able to move back to the kind of healthy middle. But in the process, you said that you can get hurt.
Yeah, and nothing ends up changing, or everything ends up changing, and then you don't. It's, how do I say this? I've heard a lot that people go to these workshops and they have this huge opening and they go back to their life and they don't know what to do afterwards. They don't know how to integrate that into their lives. There's that, or people have those huge experiences and they go straight back to living their old life. or it opens up a lot of boxes that they don't then know how to close in themselves. Like they're going into these very deep, dark parts of themselves and just opening them up. And that's what a lot of these like very impactful events do, is they just open it. And then what do you do with that? How do you integrate that? How do you change your life? Healing and learning happens most effectively when everyone is feeling safe. And that's how you create difference. I used to take a very activist look at all of these issues, and it was my plan to work in feminist foreign policy and to be fighting the good fight and fight all the time. And I just realized one day that we're not fighting based on science or data anymore. That's been proven that people don't change their minds based on those things. To change people, I think people need to feel safe and love. I feel like we're all looking for that. So it's the same idea with this new way of orienting your life to pleasure. It's small titrated steps. And yeah, the big impactful stuff is not the kind of thing that I do.
Gotcha. Okay.
You spoke about touch. If you can tell me a bit more about what kind of touch, how do you do this?
So all touch is client led. All the practices that we do are client led. And that dynamic in itself is very healing, because most of us haven't experienced touch that was totally directed by us. And asking for what you want is far more important actually than actually receiving the touch from me. So a lot of the work that I do with people before we get to touch, and this could be 6 or more sessions before there's any touch work at all, is massaging the muscle of noticing your desires, valuing them, and then being able to communicate them. Those 3 skills are really difficult. Once they have a handle on this, we work then through the body of actually receiving and fulfilling that desire. And that's another opening, because once you have a value in yourself that you're respecting those desires enough to be able to say them, and then having the bodily experience of actually receiving them, that's just a whole new level. So that's the way touch is integrated into my work. But it definitely doesn't happen every session.
What is the difference with embodiment? If it's embodiment, is it that I do the process, or is it still with you?
So are you talking about embodiment practices?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are just aspects that are woven into the one-to-one client sessions that I do. Embodiment is a theme in everything that we do. Embodiment is just taking those experiences. So rather than teaching you anatomy like on a textbook or something like that, it's taking it into the body. So let's say there's a female that wants to learn the anatomy of her vagina. Instead of just showing her a sheet of paper with that, we learn it through the sensations of the vagina and the sensations of the vulva. I do something called vaginal mapping where, with every time there's genital touch, I'm always wearing gloves and I'm completely clothed. So the touch is one way. And we're actually mapping the sensation. So she's directing where I'm putting my fingers and how I'm doing it as well. She's also learning the anatomy while we're doing that. So as we're going through, I'm saying these are your outer labia, these are your inner labia, and I'm touching them right now, and this is what they feel like. And your brain actually makes different connections to that knowledge if you actually have a sensation of what it actually feels like, that you have one of those. It's different than seeing it on a piece of paper and saying, okay, that's like the concept of it. And then taking it into the body is like, okay, this is what it actually feels like to have a vulva or to have a penis.
Yeah. In that sense, it's much easier for males than for females. The mapping, for us, because it's outside, we can basically see most of it. For you females, it's harder.
I wouldn't say that females know less because of their anatomy, but I would say that I noticed that they know less about their anatomy probably because of the way we think about female or sexuality for women.
So I was thinking about the fact you can't see, so it's harder. But what you say, it's belief systems that prevent you from learning.
I would say so. Yeah. Because it's not that difficult to take a mirror
Okay.
and look
Yeah.
at your vulva. It's just not that difficult. If we were socialized for that to be more normal and we talked about vaginas and vulvas like we do about penises and dicks and whatever, um, I think more women would be taking mirrors down and looking at their bodies.
Makes sense.
I didn't. I didn't think about the mirror.
Yeah.
So simple. So
Yeah.
simple.
It's easy.
Okay. Cool. Wall self-acceptance and meditation. How do you do it, and what is special about the way you do it through the sexological bodywork tools versus what Buddhists would do?
Whole self acceptance is what I was talking about earlier, that if we're allowing for all parts of our bodies and ourselves and our desires to be witnessed without judgment or trying to change them, we allow for this integration of the self. The meditations that I tend to do usually have a lot of movement in them. I always want to create an environment where people can feel like their bodies are getting unstuck and they have this flexibility of movement in their bodies, which translates eventually to flexibility in the choices that they're making in their lives. Our bodies can prevent us from making choices that are following our desires. In the meditations that I do, a lot of the time we're tracking the sensations of the body and allowing the body to move the way that it needs to. The work being client led, I don't have a set of principles like you would find in other meditation practices. What I'm doing is creating space for people to notice what's happening in their bodies right now.
When I think about meditation and pleasure, basically, if you do a Vipassana, for instance, you don't want to engage with pleasure. You probably want to notice it and then let it go. Is it the same kind of thing? It comes and it goes, or you engage and you go deeper into the pleasure and into the sensation, and you basically explore and can enjoy it?
It depends on the intention behind the practice. So, if we're trying to meet a challenge in your life, let's say someone doesn't trust community and they don't feel safe spending time with others, a meditation that we could do is pendulating back and forth between this challenge and a resource in your body somewhere. There's no set of principles. I will never say to clients, like, if you're feeling arousal, we're not getting attached to that, just move on. It's more like this is an open space. So what comes up is what's here and it's fully welcome here. And so there's definitely no like pushing away or moving on or anything like that. It's really like, let's bring it to the space so that I can witness it and your system can have the experience of someone fully accepting that with full love and authenticity and just meeting that face to face.
If I want to explore it further and I want to stay with it for as long as I want, we'll be supporting it basically, whatever I need. Okay. How do you integrate all of these different practices? So the touch, the meditation, embodiment, I understand is a theme. It's not one practice. Sometimes there's a goal, sometimes there's no goal. How does it all integrate? If I was thinking about your practice with my set of eyes, I would be like, okay, what are you trying to get out of the practice? And then I would articulate all those different things towards that goal. But what you tell me also is there's no goal. There's just exploration. So how do you play with all those elements? I'm confused, basically.
So, so we work. I work with intentions with my client. And so I would say, so the difference between the two, I would say like a goal would be, I want to have a yoni massage, for example, and I want to experience pleasure for this hour. There are people that do that and I've received those and they're lovely, but that's not what I do. An intention behind it could be, let's say the client wants to explore their learning edge with receiving touch and not giving back. So that's already a big ask. So we're taking sex out of partner dynamic.
To create a sandbox that has absolutely no impact on my partner relationship, because basically she's not here to witness what happens. And I can experience whatever I want without the fear of her judging me or wanting compensation in the future or whatever. Basically, that's a place to explore completely without any consequences or repercussions.
Yeah, the value of taking pleasure out of the partnership and into a professional space is that you're able to fully explore your own internal world because you're with a coach instead of your partner. So you're able to explore things in your solo sexuality that are more difficult to experience with a partner, but I wouldn't say impossible, but I'd say much more difficult.
Okay. Sorry, I interrupted you. We were taking this example to speak about the integration, and I cut you and I was trying to understand the example.
Yeah. So clients come with an intention to the session, and that can be that they want to feel more resilient in an activating situation, like being more sexual in a community, let's say. And what we do is we work together to create kind of an agenda for the session. I make a few suggestions and then we tailor it to what feels right to them. So it's really client led in the fact that whatever feels doable to them is what we do. And we don't go past that. Again, with this idea of we have one foot in safety and we have one foot in the discomfort or the challenge. And it's up to the client where we go because they know what feels doable and what doesn't feel doable.
Gotcha. How is it better to explore the body through the body versus just learning about it intellectually?
So let's say you've never seen the color red. If you learn every piece of information you could possibly learn about the color red, you have a list of all the objects in the world that are the color red. That's lovely. But if you've never seen it, then your body's still not going to know what you're looking at, what you're supposed to be looking at. We can only learn so much through reading a textbook and learning information that's written down. They've done studies on this. When you're playing, you learn so much more than when you're just sitting and doing the traditional way of learning new information.
To go back to the integration piece, you basically create sessions ahead of time for the person, or you just flow with the person in the moment?
No, we work with whatever feels alive for them that very day. We create larger intentions for the block of sessions that we're doing, but when they come in, that's when we decide what the agenda is going to be, because we all have this spider web of influence of what makes us and what makes us feel the way that we do. And these threads go, they go through all of these different levels. So whatever is alive for you today is going to be relevant in the larger pattern of your life. And so we just work with what feels alive then, also because that's what's alive in the body. That's what they're feeling right then. And so you'll be able to pattern interrupt much more effectively with whatever feels alive for them right then. And so I don't make an agenda before clients in, because we're working with their intention and what they feel safe to explore that day as well.
Okay. There are 3 questions you have on your website that were extremely strong to me because I think you're hitting the target with them. There was, can you feel the sensations in your body before you label them? Which you talked about earlier. Do you have a definition of sex outside of the cognitive or the goals? And do you experience pleasure for pleasure's sake? And I think those 3 questions are basically the essence of everything you've been talking about and everything I understand you do. They are transformative in themselves. And when I was reading them, I was asking myself, how often do you get people who say yes to the 3 questions? What are the types of answers you get?
Do you feel like answering those questions now?
Yes, for the first one, because of acting and also because of Vipassana meditation, because it's always going back to the body. And it's funny, I was reading about psychological fixity and flow. And Rogers is basically mapping people between psychological fixity and flow. And one of the things to help people who are more in the psychological fixity, for people who are not able to acknowledge their emotions and even feel, which was my case for a long time, is basically you go back to the body. That's the only way to focus on the body, because if you stay on your mind, it's looping up there, but it's not connecting to the body. So this one, definitely a yes. Sex outside of cognitive and goals, yes, but it's recent as well. And then, do you experience pleasure for pleasure's sake? Yes, that's been a long time. The first one was the latest one. And then do you have a definition of sex outside of the cognitive or goals? It was a bit earlier than the first one. But yeah, I think the first one has been the most difficult one for me.
And so you got a yes in all 3 of them.
Yeah, but then it's not a yes, no thing. But I'm closer to yes than I used to be, so I'm celebrating.
Yeah, good. Celebrating is a lot of what we do.
Yeah.
In Sexological Bodywork. So, yeah, people come to me for all different reasons. So even though you had a yes to all of those, I imagine that there's still something
Oh yeah,
to
there's still
work on.
loads. Yeah, there's still loads of space to explore.
Yeah. So even when we have this ability to access pleasure easily, are we able to keep that resilience in all kinds of situations? Can we still do it when we're coming up against the most challenging parts of our lives? And so if you're getting a yes to those questions, that's lovely. And then if people are still coming to me, they feel like they have a good handle on those things. I would say it's more a question of resilience and can they keep a hold of that throughout the varying experiences you have in life.
Okay. One that I'm interested in because I know about other modalities for this. It's about bringing the attention to the body and being with the sensations before applying the label. In Vipassana, for instance, you sit and let things happen. You see how it feels in the body, but you let them go. And then it's about body scanning. Basically, everything that comes, you let it just like waves. You don't want to stay with them for too long. If they're staying, you just accept them, but you don't want to hold on to the pleasurable parts and reject the negative parts. And in acting, you feel what's happening in your body, and then you would play with whatever emotion or whatever energy you feel in your body. And so you would be basically constructing on top of that emotion. So those are the two ways I played with being in the body first. How do you do it on your side?
So I'd say it's probably the opposite of what you described when you were talking about the Vipassana. So we're following the sensation and allowing it to expand. I usually start with the body scan and then whatever feels most alive for the client right then is where we go. We follow their attention and allow that sensation to expand into its full expression, whether that is a metaphor or a color or a texture or even a movement in the body. And the idea is that hidden in the challenge that we're meeting in our body through sensation is the solution as well. So it's just a real, like, radical trust in the self organizing system that we have inside of us. That's one of the reasons why I use the exact language that the client is using, because it's my belief that we hold the ultimate keys for our healing in the exact expression of how we're feeling, not so I'll never change slightly the words that they're using. It's not letting sensation pass through and letting it go by. It's actually following it and allowing it to expand.
Gotcha. Okay. You spoke about whole body acceptance. We spoke about it earlier. And you say it's a cornerstone of somatic sex education. When we exclude a part of the body, we instill shame. Shame can be understood as segregation of parts of the self. When we work with the entire body, we allow for rejected parts of the self to integrate so that we may experience wholeness. Do you have anything you want to add on top of what you said earlier on this?
Um, I would say something that people don't think about when they hear that is that that includes desire. So it's really kind of depoliticizing desire as well. We think a lot about, um, like I've already talked about the parts of the body that are kind of shrouded in shame and we are totally disconnected from. I also work in the same way with desire. So if there are desires that haven't been expressed or that don't feel like they could ever be accepted by anyone, we bring those to the space as well and allow for them to exist in the definition of you because they are there already. It's like all of these things are there and we're operating every day based on their existence. And bringing them up and bringing them to the front really allows for integration and total flexibility in the decisions that we're making because it's in full authenticity and full recognition of all the parts of ourselves.
You get you. I understand that you meet clients. There are some things happening in the session and then you give them homework. That's what happens. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we craft it together. I don't prescribe anything still, but yeah, we craft that together as is whatever is relevant to the intention of the session.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you have any examples of home practice that you do?
Yeah. One of my favorites is bringing in a mirror into self-pleasure sessions. So you're really connecting with what your body looks like right now without any changes and setting a conscious self-pleasure practice can be transformative as well, just like you would do a yoga. practice. Like you're setting the time you're going to do it and the length and the intention behind it, and also breaking habits. When we're able to break habits in our self-pleasure session, when we then go back into sexuality and partnership, we bring with it so much curiosity and presence when you're with someone else. And so, yeah, like a self-pleasure practice would be one example of a home practice, an intentional one.
Gotcha. Interesting.
I think it's about intention. You always go back to the intentions for self pleasure and for couples. It's like, I mean, for us right now, it's a matter of finding time because with Leo and life has changed quite a lot and we don't have much time. And with time, you can explore more intentions, or at least that's the fallacy, right? Of you have more time, I can be more intentional, but you can be intentional with little time.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see the power of being more intentional coming to your partner, especially if you are curious again, whether it's through practices like this one or just new things that are coming to your life and you're like, oh, I could do this. And you come and you try instead of going through the same patterns. One of the things I love that actually I almost reused it. You were talking about the non-judgmental, non-goal oriented space where women have the opportunity to be witnessed in whatever way they need most. I love the non-judgmental, non-goal oriented because most of the things I think about are usually goal oriented. That's a bias that I have. I was thinking the way it was written was more for females because it was more about witnessed and feeling and it's a bias, I tell you. It didn't feel it's like something I could offer to men. But I love the
men's
concept.
circle.
Yeah, you do.
I don't. I can't help the men's circle, but there are men's circles that are their exact container.
The exact same thing.
Yeah.
Of being witnessed. Okay. It's funny. The world witnessed. I guess I have a massive bias there. Anyway, what happens with those circles? What do you do?
So we usually do an hour of practices, and I bring to those whatever theme feels relevant to me right then. So I just had a women's circle a couple of days ago, and the theme was the pleasure of consent, and it was a super beautiful event. There were women of all ages there, and everyone brought with them a different history of sexuality and consent. And we it was so beautiful. We did this movement practice where you're just really dropping all identity that you have and dropping all of the roles that you have and just setting them down and allowing authentic movement to come from that place without any supposed tos or any like the way you're moving your body. So I can I can feel in my body right now that I'm moving in a slightly different way than I would naturally, probably because you're interviewing me and because you're we're on Zoom, and I can even feel this like box, this like Zoom box around me in my physical space, even though it doesn't really fit. And just dropping that and dropping the role of being interviewed and dropping the role of sexological bodywork and actually moving in a more authentic way from there. And what we did is we told the story of consensual touch with our bodies from that place. And yeah, people really liked that. And it was super beautiful to witness as well. And so that's an example of one of the practices that we would do in those circles. And then for the second hour, we just, we have a sharing circle where everyone has an allotted time to speak to their experiences of the exercises, or to just bring whatever they need to be witnessed. Being witnessed is such a powerful tool. Like it used to be integrated in community. We didn't used to have all these like hidden parts of ourselves. And all this shame, there's shame around so many things, and just bringing things to a space where you can't receive advice. No one can give advice. You can't comment on what anyone is saying. You can't give reactions unless you ask for explicit consent. What comes out then is just pure, authentic, like flow. Whatever is happening in your mind is exactly what comes forward.
You think it's worse today than it used to? Because I feel that it's getting better. It's just that we tend to curate our lives on the outside so that it looks just like what we see on Instagram or the TV or whatever. But I feel that we have the power to share. And I think more and more the story of vulnerability and strange stuff, actually, I think are getting, there's more space for them because I think you can find your tribe wherever globally, whatever your sexual needs are. You'll find people like you because everyone is connected, right? So before in a city, you would be maybe the only one doing X, and now you have the same number in your city and in your local area, but you can connect with someone in Japan who's doing exactly the same thing. So in my mind, it's much open now. It's much more open now, but you still have pulls of this is how we need to be, because some people are more famous and they have more, their platform is much bigger. So then they convince more people that this is the way you should be doing it. But that's always been this way, just at a smaller scale. So I feel free to be, I mean, you just need to do it online. You can't do it really physically. But I don't know.
I think we've got out of waves. I don't think humans are inherently like we are today. And so I don't think we started out this way. And I don't think we're born this way. So when we're born, as children, are not born with roles. And
okay, so you're thinking more about the natural way of being based on babies and based on where we were closer to when we were in the animal kingdom.
Like way back. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So before culture. Yeah. Okay. I see. That makes sense. Yeah. So we are receding. We are going back towards what more freedom. We are going towards more freedom, but we went through very, very little freedom, basically. Yeah, that makes sense.
We've taken a very windy road.
Yes.
Pardon.
Yeah. That makes sense. It's cool. Okay. And what is the key for those events? What is the key for them to be successful? What do you think is making them, like the one you just did, you felt super good. You're still on this nice energy that you got there. So what made it so successful and what can you replicate?
What I keep hearing from people is how safe they feel at these events. And that really feels like the key for my offering anyway. It feels like what's most relevant to me is creating a space for people to feel safe. And then from that place to explore things that don't feel so comfortable.
How do you do it?
I just create an environment where people can make the choices that feel right for them. So just creating ultimate flexibility and being intentional about that in every practice that we do and every instruction or every suggestion that I may make. I think that requires constant intention because we're so oriented towards so much rigidity and so little choice. And so every time we start a practice, it's not just saying at the beginning of the workshop, all of this is an invitation. It's very difficult for people to feel that's true throughout the entire thing, especially when there's nowhere to fall back on if they then decide not to do something, or where it feels like this is a goal, the oriented thing. We have a goal that we're getting to. And if you don't do this, you're falling off the track and then you're not going to get to the place. So something that I'm always reminding people of is, if this does not feel nourishing to you, this practice doesn't feel nourishing to you, then stay where you are. And that would be a bigger gift to you and to everyone around you than any practice that you could possibly do with me. And actually following your desire, following your pleasure, following your safety is going to be more transformative than anything I can show you. And so creating that space so that they can make those decisions and choose, and creating that space where they can make that choice, I think is what makes people feel so safe.
And then they do it anyway because they feel safe.
Sometimes they do it and sometimes they don't. And I think, and both of those groups of people have come away transformed in some way. And they've gotten what they needed. More importantly, we don't need to transform at every event that you come to. If you're getting what you need that day, then I'm happy.
Yeah. That's one of the things I need to learn. I like this intensity we were talking about at the beginning. it's one I've been seeking for myself. And also I tend to think that those events and experiences that are really intense bring stuff to you that are very, very interesting from an exploration standpoint. And then, you can fall back if you want. But I like the idea that you bring of choice all the time, enabling choice all the time, enabling freedom all the time. And the idea of the resource, so the safe space, and always you have one foot on one side and the other. I love those concepts. I need to see how I integrate them in my practice. But
you find intensity anyway when you're doing that. Like you still find intensity when you're in safety and you find transformation and you find change. It just lasts. It's going to last, or it's going to do whatever your intention is, because it's going to integrate. It's tying somewhere inside of you.
Yeah, I'm more the guy who burns the ships so that he stays on land and fights. Anyway, okay. I had something about your clients' journeys. If there's anything that you can see repeats itself, or every journey is completely different, do you see themes that are always there?
Oh, they're always different. I mean, there's societal sexual trauma that we all have because of our definition of sex. First of all, so I do not work with the definition of sex that's penetrative sex. That's not the only kind of sex. It doesn't always involve genitals. It's not even going to always involve touch. So the first thing is usually to widen that definition for people to even understand my work, and to widen the definition of pleasure as that which your body moves towards. And so that's definitely a commonality because of how we define those two things. But I'm amazed at the diversity of reasons people come to see me.
Okay. And what is the number one reason why people come to you?
Well, I would say not allowing for desire. Yeah, not allowing for the depth of desire to come to full fruition in their life.
So
That does,
they see the limit, they see where they block, and they want to unlock.
yeah, and that doesn't always involve sexuality. Yeah, sometimes it's just desire, which, if you have a very broad definition of sexuality, it is still sexuality. But yeah.
Okay. And we don't know what we don't know. What do they come and discover and they're like, oh my God, that was the one important thing? Like, is there something common there?
I've asked people what interests them in my work, and when they hear that I teach through the body and recognizing the sensation in the body and following that always touches people, even if they don't know what it means at all. I guess their body might be hearing it and kind of bringing them forward, like, hello, I've been trying to communicate to you for your entire life, and you haven't been listening to me. And so, yeah, it's work through the body is what ends up interesting people most.
Okay. And what is the main success factor for someone to benefit working with you? Is there like anything you like, if they don't do this, or if they have this limitation or this friction, then it's hard to work with you? Or can you unblock anything?
I would say that, I mean, I can hear expected responses to that question layer on in my head, like they have to do the home practices, or they have to know exactly what they want, or da-da-da.
Mine is more like willing to experiment. If they're not willing to experiment, there's no point in going there. But maybe you can unlock that as well. I don't know.
But the thing is, there's always one doable step for where they want to go. Even like, people may not want to experiment in the way that feels experimental to you. It might not feel experimental to me, for them, like whatever is doable for them. But if you're following what they're ready for, you end up going somewhere. You always end up making some kind of a step towards where they want to go.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, it's a one step in the journey. You don't have to do the whole journey. And you just start. Yeah, makes sense. Okay. So how has it been for you to get your livelihood out of this gift that you have? Because I was speaking about it earlier. It's it's taboo for many, many people, many cultures. How do you create a business around something that is so taboo?
That has not been difficult. I think people are really longing to talk about this topic. They're longing to heal their wounds with it. There's been no environment that I've gone into and had the door shut on me and people not wanting to talk about it. It's quite the opposite, actually. As soon as I say I'm talking about sexuality, and especially within a framework that was recognized internationally and has very clear principles, it's just really accessible for people. And I've been in a variety of environments since I've gotten back to Texas. I've gone into, corporate networking events and going into women's events. That people really want to talk about this and they want to heal it. They're interested to go to events too, and even if they're not meeting me one-on-one. I was just talking about networking events, but people see these events online and they're hungry for them. And I think it's because we all have wounds there.
Yeah, makes sense. And what about your parents, your family, your friends? How has it been to practice this? There are some parts that are easy to accept, I guess, the meditation piece, but the touch, for instance. I think about my own parents. I have trouble explaining to them what I do, and it's not taboo at all. So your part, being an entrepreneur around a topic that is probably taboo, how has it been?
I think I have shocked my parents so many times that when I got to this point, they were just like, yeah, okay, that pretty much fits in with everything else. So that wasn't difficult. And my friends, actually, I have lost a few friends since changing my life to be more oriented towards pleasure. I think it can scare people. Um, and I
It's strange. I would have thought the family was more a problem than the friends. That's super strange.
Yeah, but yeah, I know. I was surprised as well, that I had that reaction from some people, but I also really deeply understand it.
But
I
it's you removing yourself from them, or it's the well, I mean, I guess that's the same thing.
No, it's not me.
Okay.
It wasn't me removing myself from them. It was. Yeah, I got scared some people with this.
Interesting.
Yeah, but my family has been really supportive, like incredibly supportive. I couldn't have moved back to the US without their help. Especially my parents and my sister and my best friends. Yeah, they're I couldn't have done this without them.
That's cool. You saw two different environments. What about Europe or Spain versus the US? How is it to do business there and here? How easy it is? How prepared is the market? Is it risky? You need an insurance, because if people say, well, she went too far versus what I wanted, basically when you do client led, it's super risky because you don't record. So yeah.
It is risky. It's not legal to do this work in Texas. And it's funny because it's not legal, from what I understand, because of the massage industry. They are the ones that craft the litigation on touch. And you can only touch for money in very specific ways. And
God. So on top of the belief system that you need to change the law.
Yeah. So yeah, and it's an interesting expression of the culture that they have such strict laws on touch, because doesn't that say something with our relationship to touch?
Totally.
So that's been interesting. And I will likely be bringing this work into the corporate world, which I wasn't expecting, but I'll be presenting at a CEO roundtable soon. And with the theme of bringing the body, sexuality, pleasure, and fulfillment back to work. And that's on its way.
That's when sexuality is much broader.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. The rebel in me wants to say no.
Good. Okay. So it's funny because I was thinking about safety, but not because of the law. I was thinking more about you protecting yourself as a woman in sexological bodywork. How do you do to avoid psychos? How do you do to stay safe during the practice? I find it risky because some people that might go beyond what you want to offer.
So I would never use psychos to describe anybody that would
Okay. Sorry.
want to work with me. But this is something that I would never have thought about if people didn't actually, it's mostly men that ask me this question, interestingly.
Mm.
So I never would have thought about it if someone hadn't asked me. Um, because I think it's because our culture around sex is so avoidant. Like we avoid it so much that we think that when we're entering a space that is accepting of sexuality, we have all of these ideas about what it looks like and how risky it can be and all the intensity that it must come with and all of these things.
Mhm.
And actual sessions just don't look that way. Like they're very slow and titrated. And I know my clients so well. It's not like they're coming for a tantra like yoni massage or something like that. Like it's a healing journey. And so I know them really well. And
No, but I'm not thinking about the typical client. I'm thinking about the 0.001% that you don't want to find and have an encounter with. It's more that part of the job that I'm worried about for you.
but how does that happen when the relationship between me and the client has been established? So it's like, it's like, would you ask this question to a therapist, like a talk therapist?
Well, yeah, anyone should protect them. I mean, yeah, I guess so. I would say, is there a receptionist in the building that you are? If anything goes wrong, can you run to someone, or this kind of thing? I guess any job, but yours is particularly stressful because there's a moment of touch. So, and you can be overpowered because you're not. I mean, if we were fighting, I would probably win. This is the part where I'm like, it's being super basic. That's the worry I have for you. And I understand what you mean, that most people would not be this way, and there's no psycho because we all have our needs, and if we explain them in the right way. But we'll always have this outlier that is risky for you. And my question was more like, okay, how do you take care of those cases?
But I think that your question is a reflection of our understanding of touch and the charge that we have around it, not inherent touch. Like I don't, uh, I don't believe that it's
I, I
more.
I will I will give you one example. I was living in Mexico, and my massage therapist got locked into a penthouse, and the guy was asking for sexual activities that she didn't want to perform, and she felt like her life was at risk, and she was doing home sessions basically. So that's where I come from with my question.
Okay.
Someone close to me, and I'm worried because the guy is just laying on the table and she's just giving a massage, but you are touching people. So there's an added point of risk. At the same time, it's less risky because the more taboo there is and the less freedom, the more things can get out of proportion because you basically explode and you want something. But on the other side as well, you're opening a box that you don't know what's in there.
So, well, just to answer your question on the most basic terms, like I work in an office with a lot of other therapists.
Okay. You never do never do home
I
sessions.
don't do home sessions. I did do them in Europe because I was working with people that I knew really well. As my business is growing, I've moved completely away from that. So I don't do home sessions. They always come into my office. And I want to caution people away from understanding touch as like a Pandora's box. Like if we open this, all hell is going to break loose and everyone will be acting out of turn. And like desire isn't dangerous. Like it's just that desire just isn't inherently dangerous.
Or 99.9999999.
No, I don't agree with that because I think that is not born out of someone having desire, and it's not born out of. I think that's not born out of like bringing touch to the table. I think things like that, things like that happen in totally
Anywhere. Yeah. Okay. I see what you mean. You're not creating a space where there's more probability of meeting a cycle. Sorry for the word.
different.
You're not creating a space where those things can happen, but it's the same probability as anywhere else, and there's low probability, and you have the way you protect yourself is basically being in an office. It's basically my way of framing the question creates resistance in you, but
Yeah. And also my client, the people that come to me, they understand really well what the work is. They know, they understand that they're not coming for a pleasure massage. That's not going to happen. It'll be intention based, client led, like, within a
Good
very
job.
specific framework.
Is one-to-one the best modality that you found so far?
I enjoy it a lot. I enjoy hosting women's circles a lot. So I'm also following my pleasure in my work. I do practice what I preach. And so the important thing is where I feel the most drive to go towards, because that's what I'm going to be most effective in as well. I really love, love, love working one-to-one. And I've also really enjoyed hosting women's circles. And I look forward to hosting courses soon. And I would say that one-off events and group courses are a great introduction. One-to-one work is always going to be super valuable to have someone hold space just for you. Of course, that's going to be really
Yeah.
cool.
You have the therapist for yourself. Yeah. And when you do group sessions, do you pair up people so that they play different games or different situations together? Or is it just themselves at the moment?
I've done a few exercises like that in past events, but working with people's solo sexuality, there's so much there. If you are in tune with your desires and you're able to give yourself the touch that you want, and you're aware of the touch that you want, even, you can then bring that to a partner. But if you don't have those pieces, it's very difficult to have like a fully fulfilling sexual experience with a partner if you don't have that like solo sexuality base. And so working through people's just by themselves has been really, really potent. And is usually like far more than enough for like a workshop or a group event.
Gotcha. And would you be able to turn it into an online course, at least for the beginner stuff? Are you thinking about it?
I would like to. Yeah. That'll be, I think that's going to be the form of the next class that I offer.
Oh, okay. But still, you would be performing live. You would not be like a self-paced learning kind of thing.
No. Yeah. It's going to be live sessions on Zoom, and depending on who signs up, if they're all in one place, if they're in my area, then we'll do in-person women's circles incorporated into it.
Cool. Okay. Exciting. And do you think that there's material for online stuff self-paced long term?
I think so. Yeah, I think that that's possible. I'm just thinking about all the work that would require right now. So
By then you have a team.
like that's where that's from.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And thinking about Kat and I, do you work with couples?
Yeah.
Yeah. Same moment, or you do like one first and then the second one?
Oh, it could take any form.
It could take any
Yeah.
form. And that's part of sexological bodywork, or you do your own practice on top of it?
Bodywork, yeah, just works with couples as well. I mean, I'm bringing my own specific flavor to sexological bodywork. So, a lot of the philosophy that I have is not something that they would actually teach you in the certification course. I'm using their tools to create my own way of doing things.
Cool. Okay. And now the part that I'm most thinking about or designing for, if you think about the result of tomorrow, let's say you can create an all-inclusive place where you can do any kind of activity that you want. I will give you a context on my thinking around it. If you go to a Vipassana, you need to cover yourself. Like, I would like to wear shorts because it's summer and you're hot, and you're like, no, it needs to be long pants. And below the knee, you have to have long sleeves as well. So basically trying to cover the body as much as you can and not be sexy, basically, because you don't want to turn on people, because you try to reduce the stimuli of the environment. And being sexually aroused is part of the things you want to avoid, because you want people to go deeper and deeper into subtle sensations. So that's where I come from. So when I design the perfect experience, I'm obviously very interested in exploration. And that's the thing we spoke at the very beginning of, bringing people to experiences that they might not live in their day-to-day life. And I find it super exciting as an exploration part. But as a baseline, I would be much more cautious about maybe not in the Vipassana being so strict. But yeah, I would definitely not bring sexuality and pleasure on a daily basis 24/7, because I would be worried a bit of the consequences based on the things we spoke about. So that's the whole thing. And I understood your thoughts on, you don't want the pendulum to oscillate between too much reserve and too much craziness. And so integrating it throughout. I love the idea of following your your heart and basically living every moment the way you want to live it. So that balance, I guess, is what we need to find, right? And so if you imagine a place like, just imagine a place in nature, you create an experience for people to reconnect to themselves, to their uniqueness that will make them extraordinary in their creation and in their being on a day-to-day basis. What is the space for sexological bodywork in such an environment? What do you recommend me to implement in this kind of retreats where people basically work and do inner development, just like they would do a normal work day. But you basically can guide them throughout different activities. They can choose to take part in it, not. And what's the place of sex? Because I've not resolved this one. I don't have any position on it.
So I think that, so the question is revealing because you're speaking within the framework of shame and guilt and suppression and avoidance.
No. It's more risk. It's risk management. It's the framework of risk management.
But why is it risky? My question is like, I understand your question, and I will get to that. But I think it's important to recognize that it's because of our definition of sex, our definition of pleasure, and all of the connotations that it has in our society that this is a problem. It's not inherent in pleasure and desire and sex.
Okay. To me, it's risk management because you have teachers are highly regarded. So if you take a coach who has a lot of experience, or a yoga teacher, or a tantra teacher, whatever, there's a kind of a hierarchy that exists between the students and the master, let's say. And the risk for me is I don't want one of those people in position of power to overpower a student. That's more that dynamic that I'm worried about. It's not about shame. It's not about, because honestly, if we can be naked, people want to be naked, that would be actually transformative to me. Because it's cost free. You basically can create a crazy experience. Just get naked, walk barefoot, and you already have, you spend 1 week like this and you come back and you completely transform. So for me, it's a cost effective way to bring transformation. But my worry is it's that 0.0001% and the reaction that people would have towards the brand or the company or whatever you create around those experiences, because you took a risk and you got bitten. That's where I come from. It has nothing to do with shame, because I don't say I have zero resistance on those topics. I don't say there's no work to do on myself, and there's probably still some shame, but it's not the driving factor there. It's risk management from a position of people overpowering others. And I know this from foundations that offer courses and experiences, and some of the teachers are going beyond what they should go, because they can be alone with a student, and the student might go beyond what their consent is, because in the moment they are maybe overpowered by the beauty of that person, or the strengths or the power or whatever. They see them in such a high regard that they don't resist and they do something they don't want to do, and boom. So of course, if they train on sexological bodywork, they would not go there, but you don't have the chance to say, hey, maybe not everyone is going to be trained, and some people will be influenced and they will do things that they don't want to do. So I'm trying to protect those ones. That's just to frame the question in a way that it's not just about shame.
So I'm always trying to protect those people as well. And that's basically everybody. That's most people, is they don't know where their boundaries are. They largely don't know what they want in their body. That's certainly where I was before I started this journey. And I think that's the common experience, because we're so disconnected from our bodies and disconnected from pleasure. So I understand creating the environment so I think there's several ways to create that environment of safety and of choice. One of them is taking away, just stripping all of the sexuality from the environment. And that's one way to do it. And another way to do it is to very intentionally and constantly create a consent-based culture. And that takes a lot of work, because we have a culture that's so opposite to that, like so opposite to that. And so you have to keep that in mind with every activity that you're presenting. Like we spoke about before, it's always reminding people that following what they want to do now is more valuable than any other activity, because, well, I believe that it is. And so I'd say there are two ways to create safety for those people. And also, I just want to touch on the troubling relationship we have to power, which is it's so related to sexuality, because a lot of the way people play with sexuality is playing with power dynamics. It's because we need to know that we're safe being in our power. We also need to know that we're safe when other people are in their power. And we do that through play, just like animals do. If you see two dogs playing, if you take away the kind of agreement that they have, they're fighting. But what they're doing is they're playing with the power dynamics, but then they're constantly looking back and saying, are we still not fighting? We're still playing and making eye contact and staying in that engagement, but they're playing with power dynamics. Because we are so averse to play and so averse to sexuality and avoiding sexuality so much in our society, we're also not playing with power dynamics. And so we have this avoidant outlook on that as well. And that creates environments where people don't know what they want. They can't ask for it. They can't ask to take from somebody. And people don't know how to ask. They don't know how to just allow people to take from them, which all of those things are inherently pleasurable. But we have such a complicated relationship and a troubled relationship with power that we end up in these shadow spaces all the time. And again, I don't feel that's inherent to power. I think that's a product of our very problematic relationship to it.
You're unpacking so much wisdom there. I think education is the thing that we need to do so that people are empowered to say yes or to say no. But that process takes time. And if you do an experience that is only a weekend, let's say, or a week, even a month, can you give the literacy and can you give the consent tools so that they get there quick enough? And then the second question is, sometimes in play, it can feel okay in the moment because you're in a dynamic that brings you there. And then you look back and you're like, what the hell did I do? You play far away from where you are today. And when you come back to where you usually are, what you did looks completely crazy to you because you were in an energy that you can't connect to anymore. So the step thing that you talked about makes total sense, because if you do just one step from that safety, then when you look back, you'll be, I just did one step. So in education, the way to solve it would be to say, even if you think that basically that would be to define that safety, define what one step would mean, and say, absolutely don't go beyond this. But then you would not be following yourself in the moment, because in those moments, crazy things happen. You want to do things that you would never do. And you connect to parts of yourself that are beautiful as well, super intense, and they are you. But look back and then you say, oh, this guy or this girl did things with me I didn't want to do. How do you solve this?
So I was going to speak to this before you went into your last example. We don't know how to repair in our society either. So when there's a rupture, it's valuable to also know the skills of repair. This idea of the genie's always going to be let out of the bottle, no matter what guards you put in front of it. That's why I don't find it particularly effective to try to take away all sexuality from situations where you don't want it to be a part of the dynamic. We are sexual beings. All of us exist today because of sex. And so rather than avoiding that, bringing it again to the forefront and acknowledging it, along the way, constantly creating a consent-based culture within your retreat. And then also creating structure where when there is a rupture, that you can repair it afterwards, and giving people the skills to do that too. And that also speaks to something that you were saying before, that we're all on this journey. And that's not to say that like teachers can then go use power dynamics really unethically as long as they repair it afterwards, because that's not authentic either. But do we know how to repair our relationship to others when there's been a rupture in relationship? And do we know how to repair our relationship to ourselves when we've gone past our boundaries? Can we forgive ourselves for doing that? And can we then trust ourselves again to go into situations where we make a different decision next time? And just working on our resilience in all kinds of situations, in all kinds of activating situations. Yeah.
That's actually a crazy, beautiful thing to do. Do you do that as well? Like when people basically went beyond what they wanted to do, and maybe there's resentment in the couple because that's one of the things you heal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, speaking in my Relationship. My relationship is an amazing breeding ground for learning, not because it's challenging and explosively expansive and pleasurable. And we're learning all of the time. And there's been many times when we've needed to create opportunity for repair. And there's always going to be that, no matter what relationship you're in, because if we're following the truth of where we are in that moment and we're not following roles, we're not following a script in any way, and we're really following the spontaneity, of course, we're going to end up rupturing, with ourselves and with other people, with people in authority. If we,
Yeah, that makes great sense.
yeah,
But that's so, yeah, and I'm probably we can close with this. But that makes me think about the law of earlier that cement belief systems
Mhm.
and by labeling things that have happened without that flexibility that you bring through the repair creates a belief system that you can't heal anymore from it because you've put a label on it and that label will hurt you because that's the story that you will keep repeating yourself. And it's not a story that you can heal from because it's so ingrained. So the meaning that you create is actually super dangerous. And if you put the law on top of it, or if you put institutions around it, makes it even worse because then you create incentives for some of those labels to be used by some actors.
Yeah, healthy boundaries are fluid and they're permeable when the situation allows for it, and they're strict when the situation necessitates it, but they move around. Just like consent. Consent is always moving around. Just because you've consented to something before it happened and then you're in the middle of it and you no longer want that, then you're no longer in consent. Then you communicate that, you make a different decision there. And if we're really in the moment and we're really following what we need and what we want and our desire, that is very fluid and it changes all of the time.
I like the dogs playing and the power plays and how I guess that's one of the things you can talk with your CEOs at the round table about how you can destroy the power structure, play with it, and then go back and see what happens. See which managers or directors or whatever different levels are okay to move because that's a sign of wisdom as well to be able to play, not stay within your role. I think that could be an interesting topic there.
Yeah, I think true power has a seed of vulnerability in it always. If you're bullying your way through things and not incorporating of what the other people around you and the situation around you and allowing for that flexibility, then you don't really have true power. You have a very shaky structure that you're working off of then.
Cool. I think in terms of questions, I think I'm there. It was super. We went beyond what I was looking for. I'm really happy. I hope you enjoyed as well.
Yeah, yeah, it was great.
That's cool. Any resources we should read? We should listen to whatever book you think is super influential on the topic.
Oh, I have a whole reading list that I'm going to develop and post on my website.
Okay.
Yeah, there's tons of books.
When are you going to do it? And are you going to prioritize the list for lazy people like me? Efficient people?
Okay, yeah, sure, I can do that. Like first tier, second tier.
Yeah, exactly. That's like the most transformative or the easiest as well, like best return on investment.
Okay, I'll look.
Nicole, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. You helped me make sense of aspects of experience I was not clear about or even ignorant of. It was inspiring to hear about your journey and your gifts. Good luck with the journey ahead. And for you listening, you can find more about Nicole and her work on her website, bodycompass.me. If you look forward to the next episode or want free access to our research, go to noesun.com/research.